Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the NECA quarter scale BVS Batman. So obviously this is the Ben Affleck Batman, and it's from the new movie, so it's kind of exciting. We haven't had too many good figures from this movie, which I guess is appropriate considering the movie wasn't super great. But we can all agree, I think, that the Batman was the best part. The Ben Affleck Batman was fantastic in the movie, and so it's nice to have a figure of him, and obviously it's nice to have him in this scale. And this guy's actually just about 19 inches tall, so he's got some definite size to him, and obviously he's just massive. So let's just get into it. It's going to be kind of a different review format since I'm over here instead of over there behind the camera. So hopefully this works out. We're going to give it a shot and see if you guys like it or not. So let's just go through the articulation first. The head is not individually articulated from the neck. That's kind of a new thing. The entire cowl from here all the way around is part of the head. So you can lean the entire thing forward and back, and you can rotate it some, but it won't work that well because you have these flaps here that kind of start to look odd as you rotate it. So personally, I would have liked to see them separately articulated, or at least have this like be a floaty piece and then let the head move around on top of it. I think that would have helped a lot. But again, it's important to remember that at this price point, they have to try to give us as much as they can for the money. So if you start getting into complex articulation like that, it's going to be really hard to keep these giant figures at the $100 price point. I mean, look at it. We have the Play Arts Kai for $150, and they only come up to here. So I think we're getting more than our money's worth still, even with issues like that articulation. Some people are complaining about the head. I think maybe it's a little bit too tall, but for the most part, it's really accurate. And once you get imposed, once you get used to the figure, you're not really going to notice it. At first, it might look a little bit off, but I think it'll be okay once you guys just have it kind of sitting there. You'll kind of adjust to it. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Some people are saying the eyes are crossed. They're really not. They're perfectly centered. It just looks like that because of the cowl and because of the way shadows work. So don't worry about that either. The eyes are actually really nicely painted. The face looks pretty good also. Since we're talking about the cowl, let's talk about the cape. It's a really nice, almost, well, it is stretchy, but it's not like, it's not cotton. It's very, very shiny, very, very nice looking cape. I like it a whole bunch. Obviously, he had more of a basic cape in this movie than in like the Arkham games. So it's not like the Arkham games at all, but it does look really nice, and you can drape it all the way over if you want to. So that's a good feature. I like that a whole bunch. The one thing that worries me about the cape a little bit is the bottom is it's just kind of scalloped. And maybe that's accurate. I don't know. I didn't look that close at the bottom of his cape, but it's definitely not hemmed. The sides are, but the bottom is not. So be aware of that. I wouldn't mess with it too much because you could end up with fraying it, but I don't know. You don't really notice the bottom too much anyway because it will drape onto the surface he's standing on. I really do like it though, especially when you just kind of hang it over the shoulders just a little bit. It looks really, really good. Now the entire body is sculpted to have that weird kind of burlap texture that he had in the movie. Who knows why they gave him that, but they did. And this figure represents or replicates that really nicely. One of the issues you need to be aware of, in the package, his belt will most likely slide up, and it throws off the entire look of the figure. So spend a couple minutes, and the belt is kind of stretchy, so you can stretch it down and get it over top of this. You can see kind of like that little flap there. Get it over top of the crotch piece, and it'll help the entire figure to look better. The chest is a bit narrow, but that's to allow for the articulation, and once you get imposed, it'll look fine. Don't worry. Oftentimes figures have narrow chests for that reason, and they look really weird standing straight up and down, but don't get an action figure to stand it straight up and down. Pose it, and you'll be just fine. So speaking of posing, the shoulders, full-on ball hinge. You can bring it all the way around however you want to. It will ratchet forward, so like I said, you can pose that, get that arm across into a fighting pose if you want to, and it ratchets all the way out to about there, so almost perfectly horizontal. So that should give you all of the range you need. And as you saw, he has the bicep swivel, so really you won't have any trouble posing the arms. Double jointed elbow. I feel like the forearm might be a little bit long in relation to the bicep, but again, once you pose it, it's not going to be super noticeable, so it's not like a deal breaker. You can rotate the forearm around, and the glove goes with it. The glove is just a bit too high. It gets in the way of the articulation a tiny bit, but you can still get way better than 90 degrees, so no real big deal there. The wrists have a swivel because they peg in, and then of course they have a hinge also, just for a little bit of extra style in your posing. For the torso, I'm not sure what's going on. It's hollow. It's soft plastic on the outside and hollow until you get to the core of the figure. I'm not sure if there's supposed to be articulation or not in there. It kind of feels like there is, but it doesn't stay, so I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not positive, so I can't really talk about it too much. I wish more companies would give you the little diagrams of the articulation, and I know they don't often do that. Almost none of them do that, but that'd be really helpful. The waist does rotate. I have no problems with that. Sometimes they seem to get stuck. This one's all right. Maybe you guys can work out an ab crunch. I don't know. It feels like it's in there, but it doesn't want to go. The crotch is an entirely floating piece, and it is semi-soft plastic, so you won't really have too much trouble with that, except for the fact that it does come down pretty low, which looks great, but when you bring those hips forward, it starts to bunch. And you can get it to bunch in certain ways by just playing around with it, and it shouldn't be a problem. So just spend some time with it. But the hips are on a T-jointed ball hinge, so they can come pretty much all the way forward. Really no big deal at all there, that's fine, or no problem at all. They do come back a little bit, but in order to do that, you're going to push out the butt a little bit, and you don't really want to push out the butt, but you don't really need to take his leg back anyway. And they go all the way out to the side. These are really nice hip joints, really nicely ratcheted, nice and stiff, but perfectly functional, so that's great. And you get a thigh swivel on there. So, again, really good. Double jointed knee, which gives you all the range you could want. Really, this guy's a big figure, but he functions just like a standard 6-inch figure. For the ankles, we do just have the double ball pegs, and I talked to Randy today about that actually, and it's strictly for stability. He said if you put a ball hinge in there, it'll probably end up getting loose, and he's probably right. Ball hinges, even when they're ratcheted, they do tend to get loose like a play art figure, so that's fine. They do have a little bit of range. You can rotate the ankles. Here, let's do this. Get that cape out of there. You can rotate the ankles inward, so you get your ankle rocker. And of course, they go forward and back. Somewhat limited, of course, because it is just a ball peg. These guys aren't the stiffest joints anyway, though, so I don't know. I might be willing to sacrifice the risk of having a ball hinge in there to give it better range. But that's going to be up to them. And of course, it is going to come down to price again because, like I said, $100 for a giant figure like this, fully sculpted, fully painted, fully articulated. They have to cut the cost somewhere. Okay, so the last thing then is we have some interchangeable hands. We have the 2 fist hands that are on the figure, and we have a gripping hand for the 2 batarangs, and then we have a gripping hand for the grapnel gun, which has the removable tips. You can put them in the front or on the gripping part. So there you go. Is it the best one they've made? Probably not. I think the Arkham Knight might take that, or maybe the Master Chief, but it's a pretty darn good figure. I was hesitant at first. You know, some of the complaints people have are valid, but I think once you get the figure in hand and start messing around with it, I think you're probably not going to have those problems. So I do recommend this guy. It's a pretty cool figure, and definitely for the price point. I mean, it's a whole lot less than the Play Arts, and it's a whole lot bigger, and probably more accurate. So I do recommend it. There you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We have new videos every day, so plenty of stuff for you guys to watch. So make sure you do that, and in the meantime, keep collecting.